At least 9 Palestinians have been killed in a coordinated series of raids and strikes carried out by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank. The Israeli army says the operations, carried out in 4 cities, were designed to, quote, thwart terrorism in Jenin and Tulkarm in the northern West Bank.
Tearing up roads as they come, Israeli soldiers have descended on refugee camps, villages and cities across the north of the occupied West Bank. According to Israel's foreign minister, these troops have gone in to destroy terror infrastructure. While Israel has been carrying out near daily raids since the Hamas October 7th terrorist attacks, this operation seems to be significantly larger. Experts say it's the first time since 2005 that Israeli forces have attacked in so many places at once in the West Bank. The city of Janine, long known as a militant stronghold, is one of the focuses of the raids. Palestinian media says that Israeli troops here have sealed off several roads and blocked access to medical facilities by building earth barriers in the streets. Israel has been attacking from the air as well, carrying out drone strikes on targets including this car that was hit near Janine. The Israeli army released this footage of another strike on the Farah refugee camp that it said killed 4 militants. This man was wounded in that attack, which he said killed his family members.
My wife asked me what happened. I told her and asked her to go and check on the children on the rooftop. When she moved to the rooftop, she found 3 of our children. 2, may they rest in peace. And 1 was injured. They took him to the hospital and hopefully he'll be okay.
It's not yet clear how long the Israeli operation in the West Bank might last. The Palestinian Authority has condemned it as a serious escalation and urged the US to intervene.
Let's bring in DW's Felix Tamzout, who's in Jerusalem, for more on this. Felix, these were, as we just heard, the biggest Israeli raids in close to 2 decades in the occupied West Bank. Can you tell us more about what Israel is trying to achieve here?
Well, the hope that the Israeli government and the army have is that they hope to, as they said themselves, thwart terrorism and basically look for what they believe is terrorism infrastructure there in the West Bank. It is a large-scale operation, or at least larger than what we have seen so far. In the past several years, there's also been the use of aircraft in the West Bank, which in the past few months has become some sort of a normality. Given the scale of the operation, it doesn't look like it's going to die down anytime soon.
Israel's foreign minister has called for the temporary evacuation of Palestinians from the West Bank as part of this operation. Can you tell us more about that? Why is he calling for this?
Well, first of all, it needs to be said that the strategy of temporarily evacuating civilians from an area has become some sort of a talking point in Israel due to the fact that it has become sort of strategic use of it during the Gaza war. At the same time, it needs to be said that the Israeli foreign minister, Israel Katz, has become somewhat known for his controversial takes, I would say, when it comes to the war. And it needs to be said that there are no such plans in place, as far as we know at the moment, at least.
OK, and just quickly, let's talk about timing. Ceasefire negotiations are supposed to restart in Doha today. Could there be any link to these 2 things?
Well, there isn't any apparent link, but we can say that the longer this operation lasts, the more casualties the Palestinian side will have, the more likely it is to influence the negotiations in one way or another. It needs to be said that the negotiations are currently in a very delicate situation, that there are talks that the disagreements still remain. So given that this is the situation, every single such hindrance of the attempts by the negotiations to reach a solution is bound to become ever more difficult.
Felix, thank you so much for that update there. That's DW's Felix Tamzout reporting from Jerusalem. And Myrav Zonshine is a senior Israel analyst from the International Crisis Group in Tel Aviv. Welcome to DW. Thanks so much for your time today. Now, these were the biggest Israeli raids in close to 2 decades in the occupied West Bank, weren't they? Tell us more about what Israel is trying to achieve here.
Well, there's nothing really new about what Israel's doing. It has been doing pretty much daily raids in areas like Jenin and Nablus, not just since October 7th, but for several years now, although the intensity has risen. And as you said at the outset, the claim is to thwart, prevent, or root out terror. But what we don't really hear from the Israeli side is the fact that much of what Israel does in the West Bank, including the phenomenon of settler violence and increasingly settler violence in collusion with army violence, is something that has obviously radicalized Palestinians and makes life there almost impossible for them. So this is something that you won't hear much about from the Israeli side. And also the popularity of Hamas since October 7th has risen, and the fact that Israel has pummeled and destroyed and killed over 40,000 people in Gaza certainly hasn't made the situation any more calm or moderate in the West Bank. I mean, the places might be geographically separate, but these are the same people that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. I should just mention to our viewers that these are live pictures that we are seeing right now. Israel's foreign minister has called for the temporary evacuations of Palestinians from the West Bank as part of this operation. Talk to her about this. I mean, does this mean this is going to be a longer operation?
I don't know if it's going to be long. I think, Israel basically does what it feels it wants or needs to do on a daily basis, so we could see an intensity for a few days. And the foreign minister said something that I think he's trying to model what's happening in the West Bank and what's happening in Gaza, which is that Israel transfers Palestinians as if they are, cattle that could just be moved around when need be. I don't know if he actually has any say in what's happening. He's not a defense minister. He's not in the defense ministry. So I'm not sure exactly how to understand what he's saying. But what is clear is that Israel does as it pleases with the Palestinian population in all these areas. And unfortunately, the outcome has not provided more security for Israel in any way.
Mm-hmm. If we could talk about timing, ceasefire negotiations are supposed to restart today in Doha. Could there be any link here at all?
I mean, I think what's important to understand, especially for the viewers, is that these ceasefire talks have, for a very long time now, been a kind of a sham, a facade. There hasn't been any real breakthroughs. The issue has been the same from the very start, which is that there needs to be a permanent ceasefire. Obviously, Israel has legitimate security concerns, but everybody in the security establishment, the people who actually deal with the day-to-day of the military in Israel, have said to Netanyahu that he needs to get a deal. The hostages and the families of the hostages have all called for a ceasefire deal, and Netanyahu has refused to enter one. This is even as we see that people are dying in captivity, even though there's nothing about what he is insisting on regarding the Philadelphia corridor, which is the border between Gaza and Egypt. All these areas that he says are sticking points is something that the defense establishment has said are not an issue, not something that the hostage deal should be, halted on or not made on. So essentially, we have a facade between Israel and the U.S. of ceasefire talks to keep up some kind of what I consider to be now a false hope of a ceasefire, because I think if there was interest in a ceasefire, it would have already been reached by now.
Myrav Zonshine, senior analyst from the International Crisis Group in Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for your time, for your insights today.
Sorry, I don't have better news. Thank you.